The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here and part of our youth budget hearing. We felt it was very important to have a budget hearing for youth in order to get them engaged in the budget hearing, but also to hear their voice. So those of you that are here, you're at a youth budget hearing, and thank you for being here. We are going to get it started. First of all, I want to introduce Councilman Valenzuela, who is my partner on the youth budget hearing, and I am going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Let's give Councilwoman Pastor a round of applause. We're actually in Phoenix District 4, which is the council district that Councilwoman Pastor serves. You're also at obviously Metro Tech High School, which is part of the Phoenix Union High School District, which is also a governing body that Laura Pastor serves on, as well as Stanford Prescott, who is here. I mean, do we have any other board members from Phoenix Union High School District? Okay, well, we have people who are tied to the district certainly here, as well as many of the students. So, as my colleague mentioned, this is for you. We have our budget director, I lost the last name for a second. I've been here. So listen, Jeff Martin's name has been mentioned about 400 times a minute for the past few weeks, and as we continue to crunch the numbers, so thank you so much for being here. Jeff, this is the person that actually, crunches the numbers for us, and when we adopt the budget, it'll have his stamp of approval on it. It's really special to have him out here, as well as our Deputy City Manager, Deanna Jonovich, who's here as well. We have members of our police department and our fire department who are here. And in fact, why don't we give all of the members of our city staff I see here, Erickson, who's here, our parks director, let's give our staff a round of applause. They work so hard to keep us safe, get our parks clean, our water running, our libraries open, and so that's very important to us. Councilwoman Pastor decided to do this budget hearing. She's quick to give the credit. She's telling me, hey, this might have been your idea. I'm telling you, Laura, this was Laura's idea. And she asked if I wanted to be part of it. I said, absolutely. This is a budget hearing. A quick story that I want to tell you. I was a teen parent. And I remember when I took my son, when we took our son to see his kindergarten teacher, and Will, very well-respected kid, respectful kid, and respected, great kid. And I remember the teacher being surprised that we were so young. And she said, and something that I'll never forget, she says, our children will grow up in spite of us. How they grow up depends upon us. And I want you all to think about that for just a moment, because our city will continue to grow in spite of us. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to show up to budget hearings. We don't have to weigh in. We don't have to give our thoughts on these things. But I will tell you, we're going to adopt a budget one way or the other, right? So it's going to grow in spite of us. How it grows and how it moves forward depends upon us. And I want to thank every one of you, especially our students, for taking the time to be here to weigh in, because this is your city. And this is a place that we're hoping that you would continue to stay after school and plant your roots and start your businesses and take that dream job and so on and so forth. So thank you again. Thank you so much for being here. I think I'm going to pass this over to our Deputy City Manager, Deanna Jonovich, so that she can kick us off. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Just really quickly, a few logistics. The restrooms are through this hallway. Please make sure that everybody picked up a tabloid, lots of information on the budget. In addition to city departments, we also have a representative from the mayor's office joining us as well this evening. Just to walk you through what's going to happen, we're going to show a short video, about 17 minutes. After the video, we'll take public comment. We're going to try to keep the public comment to 2 minutes so that we could allow everybody an opportunity to provide us comment. And so with that, we'll go ahead and show the video.
everyone, and welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2016-17 City Manager's Trial Budget.
Input from our residents is very important, as your ideas can help shape what will end up being the final budget for the next fiscal year.
The final budget is important because it provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money and how services that you depend on could be impacted.
I think the city manager's trial budget provides a great pathway for us to continue providing the outstanding services that Phoenix residents expect, and gives employees the opportunity to continue to provide that great service every day.
Why is a balanced budget important? It's required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, there is a $60 million surplus that can be used to improve essential services that will benefit the community. Examples include public safety needs, employee compensation, and restoration of some programs and services. So how does the funding work? Funding for the city budget comes from three sources: the general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds. Examples of general fund city departments include police, fire, the library, parks and recreation, and streets. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds account for designated sources of money for a specific purpose, like sales tax dollars for the hiring of police officers and firefighters, and funds for public transit.
So how did we get here? Under the leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced.
The mayor and city council have really set the tone and direction for our city staff and employees to be focused on innovation and efficiency.
Here's just some of the ways that happened. First, eliminating 119 vacant positions and other administrative savings actions that will result in an overall savings of just over $11 million. Second, there is a one-time carryover of $25 million from last year's surplus. Also, the city is saving by making needed adjustments to the workers' compensation fund and has sold extra police helicopters that were too expensive to maintain. Did you know that Phoenix has reduced administrative expenses and has the smallest number of employees per capita in over 40 years? And while still providing great services, the city has reduced authorized staffing levels by more than 2,700 positions. That is 16% since 2007. Also, city staff is constantly finding innovative ways to save money. Did you know that since 2010, we have saved $106 million in taxpayer funding? Some examples: the municipal court. It saved almost $600,000 by eliminating a criminal courtroom and a civil courtroom due to lower court volume. Plus, a new process with copy services. By reducing the number of printers and copiers citywide and securing more competitive rates with copy contracts, the city should save hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. Now to rising pension costs, which continue to be an important issue. Thanks to the leadership of the mayor and city council and actions taken by voters, the savings from reform efforts will reach $1.1 billion over a 23-year period. And what a difference a year makes. Last year's 5-year forecast projected a deficit of up to $58 million. But with guidance from the mayor and council and the efficient work of city staff, that deficit was eliminated without reducing services to the community.
Mayor and council also expect us to provide great service, and that's what the city employees work to do every day.
One of the biggest challenges the city faces has to do with how the city will continue to make its debt payments for voter-approved capital projects.
We're in a place where we need to make tough choices, like any of us during the recession, where you may have lost a job or your wife may have lost their job, and your income changed, and your bill stayed the same. So the city of Phoenix is at that point now.
Several options will be discussed, including increasing Phoenix's combined property tax rate. Phoenix has had the same rate for 20 years. That means since 1995, residents have paid $1.82 per $100 of assessed value for property tax. The rate has gone unchanged while the city's population grew and important services developed, like new fire stations, parks, and libraries. The city has been using a reserved fund to help pay off that debt. This has relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession.
What other cities in the valley, after the recession, they started to, when their assessed valuation changed, the values of their properties changed, they started to float their rate up and down so that they levied the same amount of money, brought in the same amount of income. What the city of Phoenix did, we thought that we would give our taxpayers relief. So we kept the rate at $1.82.
In the meantime, the city had debt to pay, so a reserve fund was used. This relieved homeowners from increases in property tax rates, especially during the recession. But now that well of backup money is finally running dry, and the city needs to raise an additional $37 million to pay the debt service. Otherwise, Phoenix's strong credit rating could take a hit.
We are taking in less money, and now we still have the same payments. Our payment on our mortgage is essentially our debt service. That's what we have to continue making. At the same time, we have other sources or other services that we provide. Those costs have also increased, and our ability to make those payments has gotten tougher and tougher.
The budget lays out 5 ways to solve this. A detailed explanation of these options are in the trial budget summary booklet, handed out at all public meetings and online at phoenix.gov/budget. Option number 1, increase the combined property tax rate by 35 cents to $2.17. This would equal an additional $4.25 per month on an average single-family home, about 14 cents a day. Even at this rate, the average single-family homeowner will still be paying less than they did back in 2009.
We could continue to provide services, infrastructure, pay our debt at the lowest, cheapest possible cost, and maintain a very strong bond rating, and to provide our citizens with good services for many years to come.
Option number 2, generate $37 million in other ways by increasing a local sales tax, a food tax, or perhaps an addition to your city services bill. Option number 3, use all of the $60 million surplus to provide property tax relief for 2 years. That means no money would be available to restore employee concessions or add community services, including those cut in previous years. Now keep in mind, with this option, the city would still need to find a solution to this problem in 2 years, and this could hurt the city's strong credit rating. Option number 4, use some of the surplus money to provide tax relief for 1 more year, along with some of our reserve funds. But the issue will have to be addressed again next year. Now with this option, the city could improve some proposed services, but not all. And this option could hurt the city's strong credit rating.
Some of these other options are short-term, which means they're only going to provide a solution for 1 year, maybe 2 years. And it really is just kicking the can down the road, and we will be back in this situation in a couple of years asking for a solution from our citizens.
Option number 5, cut $37 million from the general fund by making significant cuts that would directly affect the city's ability to serve residents and business owners. The city manager has outlined $44 million in services from which to choose. This includes cutting $14 million from the police department, $10 million from the fire department, more than $2 million in library services, and $6 million from the city's Parks and Recreation department. In a service business like the city, dollars translate into the people who provide the services, like 911 response, recreation programs, senior and youth services, and more.
Since 2010, we've been drawing down our fund balance reserve for our GO bonds, and we're at the end of that. So this is the last year that we can use that reserve to pay our debt service.
How will the city tackle this debt service situation for the long term? The plan is to refund and restructure bonds as long as rates remain where they are now. Until then, one of the mentioned 5 options must happen in order to pay the city's debt service for the facilities we've built. This is critical in order to keep the city's strong credit rating, which lets the city borrow money at a low interest rate to fund projects that are important to you. A look at these 5 options are on page 5 of your trial budget summary booklet.
Here's a look at the new services proposed in the trial budget. Many residents feel that protecting the public should be the city's top priority. The mayor and council agree it's critically important to keep everyone safe. That's why public safety and criminal justice amounts to 72% of the general fund in this trial budget. The new budget adds $2.4 million for the first year of a 3-year, $11 million plan for Phoenix police officers to start using body cameras.
Well, body cameras mean a lot of things. Safety is one of them, transparency is one of them, trust is another thing. For our residents, it allows them to have greater confidence in their police department.
The budget would also allow the department to hire a director of employee assistance and wellness.
Our employees are our most valuable asset. We need to make sure we take care of our employees. By hiring this position, it allows us to do that.
Now to the fire department. The budget would spend $2.8 million in one-time costs to replace the obsolete Emergency Transportation Billing System, known as EPCR.
We are the last large city in the state of Arizona to move forward with EPCR.
Electronic records will let our paramedics spend more time on patient care and less time on paperwork, and make payments from insurance carriers more efficient.
The latest technology for us to do our jobs more efficiently, protecting information of the community, bill efficiently so the taxpayers are getting revenue back into the pockets in order to provide services to the city of Phoenix.
The budget also calls for spending $1 million to begin rebuilding the road at North Mountain, along with fixing the radio tower to make it meet industry standards. The radio tower is critical to the city's public safety radio system. Now, to dedicated public safety special revenue funds. Because these funds will be balanced next year, the budget includes the hiring of 130 police officers in 2016-2017.
Other than 2015, we haven't hired any police officers for almost 6 years.
The council also approved a plan to hire 36 firefighters next fiscal year.
We have been fortunate over the last couple of years to be able to hire minimal amounts of firefighters. This will allow us to fill all of our vacancies.
Now, let's look at dedicated Phoenix Parks and Preserves initiative funds. Money would be used to maintain new dog parks, recreation centers, and playing fields. From the Development Services Fund, which is paid for by building permit and inspection fees, is this proposal. The city is seeing a huge spike in construction, which is great news. To keep up with demand, the budget calls for adding 8 new positions to meet the needs of all the growth. Out of the Solid Waste Special Enterprise Funds, the trial budget calls for adding 15 positions and equipment needed to support curbside green organics, diversion, and illegal dumping programs. This will ensure that Phoenix continues to be a national leader in keeping waste out of city landfills. The budget calls for a few additions that directly will help the members of our community. They include new funding to support the city's continued effort to get veterans off the streets and back on their feet.
So the proposed funding will support peer navigators who help veterans living on the street make all the connections they need to make to get into housing and stay housed.
And money to add staff and supplies for after-school programs for disengaged youth.
This funding would really allow us to increase our programming by offering STEM programs, physical activities, as well as interaction between the youth and adults in many of our city parks.
Looking ahead, one of the biggest challenges to the general fund continues to be the cost of employee pensions. The trial budget reflects an increase of $15 million in civilian employee pension costs. But since the mayor and city council took action on pension reform and the voters made their voices heard, these short-term increases will slow over time with a savings of more than $1 billion over the next 2 decades. Now to the police and fire pensions, which will go up $21 million. This is the result of a state Supreme Court decision. Increases in future years are partly because of other pending court challenges and system funding issues. Also, proposed reforms could help reduce how much the city will pay in the future. Then there's employee compensation. For 6 years, city employees have been part of the shared solution of our budget issues, agreeing to almost 6% in cuts to compensation. 4.2% of that is still in effect. The trial budget proposes to responsibly restore some of it, 2.6%, or $44 million, over the next 2 years. This is an investment in our most valuable resource, the workers. As a service business, the city depends on good workers to provide outstanding services. Keep in mind, the budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the city of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like.
The budget is really for the people of Phoenix, and so for it to be the best budget possible, it needs to reflect what people have to tell us. And that's why we're out to listen to the residents in the trial budget.
In summary, the trial budget has several options, including solving the debt service issue by raising the combined property tax by 35 cents to $2.17. This would allow the city to use surplus money to add critical services to our police, fire, and other city departments. It would also allow the city to restore some concessions made by city workers 6 years ago.
15 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meetings or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for attending this budget hearing and being part of a very important process. The City of Phoenix is committed to its mission of improving the quality of life in Phoenix through the efficient delivery of outstanding public services.
So the video is a great overview. If you have the budget booklet, I hope everybody has it, because Jeff will be going over the booklet really quickly, and explain all the different options before we get to public comment.
So does everyone have this book? Okay. So if you would turn first to page 5. Page 5 is really the overview of the various options that we've laid out. And this year is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we've only presented one option. This time, we presented 5. So the first option that we presented is, it has to deal with our property tax. So as you saw in the video, one of the things we're dealing with this fiscal year is our debt service. So right now, we pay debt service on all city facilities, on all of our debt. It's kind of like our mortgage. And right now, we're collecting a little bit less than what we actually need. So one of the things that we've presented in this budget is an increase of 35 cents to the secondary property tax to help pay with debt service. That's option 1, and I'll walk through a little bit more in detail a little bit later on each of these options. Option 2 would be that we keep the property tax rate the same, and we would identify other revenue streams. So instead of raising the property tax by 35 cents, we could raise the general sales tax by 0.125%, increase or reinstate the food tax at 1.25%, or institute a $5.25 assessment on the water bill to pay debt service. Options 3 and 4 deal with our surplus. So right now, for this fiscal year coming up, 16-17, which starts July 1st, we have a projected $60 million surplus. And so what we would use, if we took option 3 or 4, we'd use that surplus to cover our debt service for either 1 year or 2 years. And then finally, option 5, this is the option that really gets the most of the attention at the meetings, because people have been, for the most part, opposed to this one. This one, to cover the debt service cost of 35 cents or $37 million, we'd eliminate general fund programs and services. So those are parks programs, library programs, police officers, firefighters, courtrooms, things of that nature. Okay, so those are the 5 options at a very high level. If you now turn to page 6 is the detail behind each of these options. So page 6 is option 1. This is the city manager's recommended budget. So this option assumes, if you look at the dots on the very top, this option assumes a property tax increase to close the debt service, so that's a 35-cent increase. It also assumes that we would partially reinstate employee compensation. Right now, every City of Phoenix employee in their existing labor contracts has about 4.2% worth of concessions. So that means they've given up 4.2% of their total compensation, of their salaries, and fringe things of that nature, of 4.2%. Value of that's about $44 million to the general fund. Okay? So we partially reinstate that at 2.6%. And then we could also do some other things like public safety ads for body cameras, EPCR for fire, which is electronic patient records, a psychologist for the police department, as well as an employee notification system and some training for our employees to deal with active shooter situations. Because most employers in the valley are already doing that. Most in the country are actually doing that. Then the next area is partial restoration of employees. So like I talked about, our employees have 4.2% worth of concessions. This would restore 2.6% over the course of 2 years. Year 1 would be 1.6%, followed by an additional 1% in year 2, totaling $44 million. And then we've got 2 other areas, one of which is for prior restoration of prior cuts and expanded services. In this area, we're adding $100,000 to the library for electronic media, because we can't add library hours because it's very costly. We have to add additional staff. But what we found is we can actually catch more patrons or hit more patrons by adding $100,000 worth of electronic media. That's a 22% increase in their electronic media. Then next, we got blight maintenance. So in streets, we've cut blight maintenance in the past based on the recession and based on some of the budget cuts we've had. This would reinstate about $135,000 for alley blight maintenance. And then we've got arts grants of $50,000 and an air quality specialist for $88,000. The final category would impact some of you in this room, some of you that are youth. This is funding for youth and veterans. So we add about $100,000 for veterans homelessness and about $50,000 for a veterans entrepreneurship program. And then we add $204,000 for Parks Department, specifically $54,000 for Chavez Park to continue operating costs for that park that just expanded and had a reopening, and another $150,000 for disengaged youth. That's really to reinstate programs in the Parks Department for disengaged youth, to get youth more engaged with the parks. So then that's option 1. That's what the manager's recommended. Option 2 is on page 7. This is exactly the same as option 1. The only difference is how we close that $37 million gap in our debt service. So instead of raising property tax, this would require one of those other 3 options that I talked about. Everything else on this page is the exact same as it was on option 1. So you'd still be able to add the exact same programs and reinstate employee concessions to the same level under option 2. It's just how do we close that gap. So page 8 is option 3. So under option 3, we've got a $60 million surplus, like I talked about, for next fiscal year. Under option 3, we would take that entire $60 million surplus and we'd allocate it all to debt service. So there would be no new programs, we would not be able to restore new programs, nor would we be able to give employees their concessions back. We would take the entire $60 million and allocate it to debt service for the course of 2 years. Then in fiscal year 18-19, the council would still have to make a decision on property tax without having a reserve. Okay? So that's option 3. Option 4 is similar. It's kind of a hybrid approach. So we take a portion of the $60 million, about $24 million, and we provide property tax relief for 1 year only. So at the end of that year, in 17-18, the council would still have to make a decision on property tax. But under this scenario, we would be able to partially fund Fire's EPCR. It was a $2.8 million program. Under this scenario, we'd be able to fund about $2.1 million of that program. And then we'd also be able to reinstate only 1.6% of employee restoration. So that's $17 million a year. And we'd have about 2.6% of employee concessions still outstanding. Then you'd lose everything else. There'd be no additional funding for youth, no funding for veterans, nor would we be able to add any of those programs that we were trying to reinstate or restore from previous cuts. So that's option 4. The final option, option 5, this one is where to provide that $37 million worth of ongoing resource that we need to pay debt service, we would cut $37 million worth of general fund programs and services. So again, that's library, that's parks, that's streets, that's public safety, both police and fire, court, the prosecutor's office, to generate the $37 million that we need to pay ongoing for debt service. Under this scenario, though, you would have the $60 million in surplus still available to reinstate employee pay, as well as add the public safety ads. But we would lose the youth funding, we'd lose the veterans funding, and we'd also lose the ability to add or expand programs and services. So those are the 5 options that we laid out. Again, option 1 is the city manager's recommended trial budget. Now I'll turn it back over to the council members.
I just wanted to let everybody know that there is a translator, Judy. There's Judy over there. So if you need a headset, you can, si necesitas una máquina para oír la conversión en español, puedes agarrarlo con Judy. Okay? All right, so as we get started, we will start with our speaker cards. Those of you that want to speak, please get a card over here, and you have 2 minutes. So Benny Butt. And the next one in line that will be speaking will be Jenny Strickland.
And just a, where's the? Yeah, we're gonna ask our speakers to come to the podium. This is being recorded. You'll find it on YouTube. We want everyone to get the benefit of getting all of the comments. So Jeff mentioned all the options. If you feel comfortable telling us which option you prefer, that's great. If you're not sure, if you want to speak out on one particular item that is most important to you, and you just don't want to be, you want to be sure that that item, is supported in whatever option, that's okay as well. We just appreciate you being here and weighing in. Mr. What?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I started work for the Phoenix Fire Department in 1984. I moved out here to seek employment with the Phoenix Fire Department, not only for its reputation as a modern professional fire department, but also because of the excellent reputation the City of Phoenix and the Phoenix Firefighters Association were building by working cooperatively with each other to ensure better service for the citizens, as well as establishing a baseline for adequate compensation and benefits due to increased productivity by the workforce. The 2008 recession marked the third time in my career that my union voted to make fiscal concessions to the city to help out in difficult times. Each of the first 2 times we were eventually rewarded for good faith by the city, restoring our sacrifice. Ladies and gentlemen, I am asking you to do that now. The members of the Phoenix Fire Department have not had a raise in 6 years and are not asking for one. They only wish at this time to have their pay cuts fully restored. Each time our union voted to make concessions to the city, we made our Ulysses contract with our brother and sister firefighters to sacrifice something now that would be good not only for our future, but also for the future of the citizens of the city of Phoenix. I retired from the Phoenix Fire Department last July. I will never have the money and benefits I gave up in my last 5 years of service restored. I lost that in hard professional financial times, and I'm at peace with that. I have no stake in the game now other than my interest in assuring the current members of the Phoenix Fire Department and the citizens of Phoenix of a continuing bond of fraternity, brotherhood, and trust that existed throughout my career. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to do the right thing and restore these cuts. Thank you.
Jenny Strickland, and then who will be next is Mamie Coffey.
Hello everyone, my name is Jenny Strickland. I am with Council District 8, and I am speaking as a private citizen as well as the chair of the Emerging Arts Leaders of Phoenix, and I'm also on the Arts and Culture Commission. I support the city manager's trial budget recommendation, option 1 or 2, which includes revenue increase. I support the city manager's proposal to partially restore previously made cuts to the arts and culture grants programs. If options 1 or 2 are not approved by council, I do not support cuts to the cultural facilities management and property management services. So as the chair of the Emerging Arts Leaders of Phoenix, I am constantly interacting with 20 and 30-year-old-ish folks that are involved in the arts and are really passionate about the city. And I'm constantly seeing us losing valuable, talented young people to cities like San Francisco and New York, going all over the country. I think that investing in the arts in our city will invest in our youth and invest in jobs in the future, because arts and culture is a $300 million local industry. Phoenix nonprofit arts and culture organizations annually generate $14 million in local tax revenue. Arts and culture organizations create nearly 10,000 full-time equivalent jobs in Phoenix. And a vibrant cultural environment is critical to attracting new businesses and engaged employees who are concerned about excellent quality of life for their families. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person up would be Stanford Prescott after name, but you'll be next in line real quick. We're being more efficient.
Thank you, Laura.
My name is Mamie Coffey, and I live in Council District 6, and I'm speaking as a private citizen of Phoenix and also as the director of Camp Collie Foundation. Our organization enjoys a three-way public-private partnership with the City of Phoenix and Arizona Parks and Recreation Fellowship to support Camp Collie, which is a city-owned camp near Payson for Phoenix youth with significant life challenges. Camp Collie manifests the dream of Jim Collie, the revered late director of Phoenix Parks and Recreation Department, to help at-risk young people through supervised outdoor experiences learn to make good decisions, develop self-confidence and resilience, and build healthy relationships. Our activities include horseback riding, canoeing, archery, mountain biking, stargazing, and wildlife observation, all things that our inner city youth cannot do here in the city. And many do not have access or have never been out of the city before they come up to Camp Collie. The camp also offers a work experience program for disconnected older teens or teens that are transitioning through adolescence to help support their growth into responsible, employed, socially engaged adults through our collaboration with ACYR and the Arizona at Work program. The Camp Collie Foundation was established at the request of the city to raise money to support critical capital development and the operations. The Arizona Parks and Recreation Fellowship manages the camp. The city maintains the property currently, and which we trust it will continue to do in the new fiscal year. The first budget option proposed by our city manager would support that. And we believe that is crucial for our city because we have a trend, there's in larger cities, in Phoenix in particular, of disengaged youth who are not transitioning successfully from adolescence into adulthood. And this starts at young ages. If we don't engage them when they're younger to help them build healthy relationships, help them find positive youth development experiences, healthy recreation, and be engaged in their society and with peers and caring adults, then that puts them on that path of disconnection in the future. Camp Collie, since it opened in 2000, has provided more than $880,000 to serve more than 4,800 youth. Last camp season, we served over 150 youth. And
we need to
wrap it up. Okay. One of our key camp programs is the Kathleen Kilfoyle Children of Fallen First Responders. And we are especially proud of this because we value our public servants in our community and the sacrifice that they make for all of us to enjoy the safety and public services. These children can come up to our camp and it's a place for them to heal and, again, strengthen their support network. When something as traumatic as losing a parent can really derail someone's life. So we provide this support to a wide variety of circumstances of youth, low income, other traumatic events, and we value the support that we have from the City of Phoenix in maintaining the property, and we wish to see that continue.
Thank you. Jennifer Prescott. As Jennifer's coming up, I'd also like to introduce Councilman Nowakowski. Would you like to say a few words? Or okay. All right. Stanford. And then Jennifer Gonzalez is next.
Thank you. My name is Stanford Prescott. I am a governing board member for the Phoenix Union High School District. I am also a proud resident of City Council District 8. As a school board member, I recognize that the City of Phoenix is an invaluable ally for creating a quality public education system. As Mayor Stanton is fond of saying, as go our schools, so goes the city. To that end, I believe the city can help education in Phoenix, and to that end I support the option 1 budget, but I would recommend that the City of Phoenix consider the following. Continued investment in transportation in the neighborhoods directly around our schools. MetroTech recently had a HAWK system added to increase pedestrian safety for students, and the City of Phoenix also placed a bus stop next to South Mannheim, which enabled students to get onto the bus in a more safer and easier route. I would like the city to continue to intentionally place transportation upgrades and safety upgrades around our schools. Secondly, the city should not cut Phoenix After School Centers. These programs provide needed after-school programs for students in many high-need areas of the city. And given current state funding, it is unlikely that the schools would be able to pay for these on their own. Instead, the city should look to expand these programs to meet the high demand. And third, I fully support Councilman Valenzuela's proposed election reform for the city to expand mail-in ballots. In jurisdictions where this has been implemented, turnout has been significantly increased. This would make it easier for all City of Phoenix residents to vote, but especially our young people. The city has been a valuable partner to schools and has helped to build a stronger public education system. I would encourage the city to continue supporting our schools as stated. Finally, thank you, Councilwoman Pastor, Councilman Valenzuela, and Councilman Nowakowski for listening to our youth and community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Jennifer? And then I think it's Ms. Sweeney? Yes. Okay.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Gonzalez, and I'm a junior from Cesar Chavez High School. I would support option 1 or 2 because it would improve safety, art, veterans, youth, and libraries. And in regards to the libraries, I would like to have more hours, although, as Jeff stated, it would cost more money. Therefore, it would be a better solution to add more technology, which I think would be very helpful because after school, a lot of times the libraries are crowded and there aren't enough computers for everyone to use. Also, I think in the future, it'd be nice to have more space to have sections specifically for study groups and give students a space to work in groups. Also, I think it'd be nice to have updated study resources in libraries, such as books for ACT, SAT, and various AP courses. I also believe that this should not only be for the Chavez Library, but the libraries in the Phoenix District. And I think that the youth should be involved in this meeting in planning it and in speaking. So, thank you.
Thank you. And then I believe Michelle Reese.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonine Sweeney, and I would like you guys to know transforming lives, building futures, strengthening communities, developing our greatest natural resources, our youths. So that is why I am here today. ACYR's goal and mission is removing barriers that opportunity youth face day to day. ACYR works with these youth to improve their job skills by putting the youth through employment skills training, which consists of resume building, interviewing skills, and everyday job functions. The number one goal for ACYR is to help the youth continue their education by assisting them with enrolling in post-secondary education. And if, of course, they can't pay, ACYR will step in and financially assist these youths. ACYR would like to improve the lives of these opportunity youth in the partnership with Camp Collie, ACYR, and Arizona at Work to achieve these goals. So today, I am here for option 1 or option 2, and please take in consideration, again, transforming our lives, building futures, strengthening our communities, developing our greatest natural resources is our youth of today. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Tara Donahue.
Hello, my name is Michelle. I attend to Central High School. I feel that we should get more buses going toward the west between Camelback and Indian School because I noticed compared to this year to last year, we have more students going toward that way. We have issues where buses will get too full. We'll have to wait until the other buses because the buses won't accept more people in. We also noticed that it's a safety issue because we'll have students getting home late because of missing buses. I will also comment that we can get more youth into more comments on participating in these meetings. Thank you.
Tim Igo.
My name is Tara Donahue. I go to Red Mountain High School. Last summer I participated in the ACYR internship program that worked with Camp Collie, where I worked in the kitchen. I would not have heard about Camp Collie if it were not for ACYR, who works with the at-risk youth. The entire time that I was at Camp Collie, it was amazing. It was hard, I worked hard, but it taught me a very important lesson. The lesson was that if you work hard, you will feel accomplished at the end of the day. And I do not think that I would trade that for anything in the world. After a long day of work, I would sit and reflect on that day. What could I improve about that day and try to take it into the next work day? I also loved the amazing opportunities that came with it. I got to ride and work with the horses, and for someone who lives in a city atmosphere, I think that was pretty cool. I also received my food handler's card that will help me get a job when I choose to enter the workforce, and the many other fun activities that they offer. I believe that without Camp Collie, I would never have had these amazing opportunities. I will be returning to Camp Collie again this year, and going to the camp last year has helped me prepare for the new role that I will be taking on this year. This summer, I'm looking forward to working with the kids and seeing how happy they are. They get to do the many fun activities we offer. I'm also looking forward to the other new interns that will be participating in the program this year. This is why I enjoy Camp Collie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim, and then Grace Salinas.
Council members, staff, thank you so much for being here. My name is Tim Igo. I live at 926 West Portland Street in downtown Phoenix. And I'm also the chair of Downtown Voices Coalition, and I'm a board member of Downtown Phoenix, Inc. With Councilman Nowakowski. To help you out, I'll tell you that I do support option 1. Truly, though, I'd like to see a hard thinking on a hybrid between 1 and 2, but because you have some council members who break out into hives every time the word tax is used, I know that that is not going to happen, so I think 1 would work fine. I have 3 specific tiny items to mention and then 2 large ones. We would love to see the city's terrific tree and shade plan fully implemented. And at least could we get trees in the empty tree wells all along light rail corridor? That would be phenomenal. Number 2, we'd like to see implemented the Tier 1 projects of the bicycle master plan. The city has a phenomenal master plan. Let's see it done. You've already spent part of the $4 million initial money, so it isn't even that much more to get across that finish line for Tier 1 to get 82 corridor miles. Number 3, let's increase our park spending to at least match that of Austin, Texas, which is a great peer city in the Southwest. A great people deserves great parks. We already have them. Let's increase the funding to at least be 35% to $110 per capita. And finally, 2 broader points. Some of the best people I know in the city of Phoenix work in the city of Phoenix, and I really think they deserve everything that is coming to them, and I think the option 1 would give them that. We need to treat those people well. There is far too much focus on the cost of pensions, and although I know it's important, but we've eliminated extra positions. The workload has increased. The staff are working harder than ever and giving us a great result. Though some, even on council, want to engage in a war on municipal employees, I think we need to stop that, tell them how much we value them, and get them to stay.
Mr. Igo, if you could start wrapping up, please.
Yep. Finally, on historic preservation, we're seeing a great building being destroyed downtown right now, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on a positive and thank council members and the mayor, who's not here, for your far-thinking decision to help save the WPA building at the fairgrounds right down the road. You stepped up when the state would not, So I thank you for your bravery on that, and I hope others emulate your model. And I'm sorry, I have to go to another meeting. Thank you.
Grace Salinas and then Hazel. We found a phone in the bathroom, so somebody's missing a phone. It was in the men's.
Oh, yeah.
We can't call it only because there's a security zone. You can check. You can open it.
Okay. My name is Grace. Good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Arroyo Salinas. I live in an area known as Central City South. It's 5 square miles. It has 12,000 residents. The boundaries are 16th Street, Maricopa Freeway, Rio Salado, and the railroad tracks downtown. 90% of the residents live at or below the poverty levels according to the HUD guidelines. The average educational attainment level is the 9th grade. I am a resident of Marcos Cenizas, formerly known as Marcos Cenizas Public Housing. We also have 66% of the public housings in our 5 square mile, but we can't, and they are no longer referred to as public housing. I am here to say that Maricopa County and the city of Phoenix is ranked #1 in the U.S. with the number of youth ages 16 to 24 out of school and out of work. 2014, with South Phoenix and Maryvale being the areas of the most need. In 2014, the youth crime shooting that occurred at Chavez High School continues to haunt Phoenix. And just today, we had a double stabbing, so it's like still here. And since January 6, 2016, several shootings have killed teens. In 1992, the City of Phoenix City Streets Teen Program is named National Model by Carnegie Council on Adolescent Development. This led to the creation of the At-Risk Youth Division and teen centers throughout Phoenix. A much-loved Parks and Recreation director retired in October 2001. The new director, who dismantled the teen programs, which included all outdoor youth programs, because she disagreed with the program philosophy. In 2007, the recession began, and the entire program is discontinued. Today, dog parks outnumber teen programs. Recommendations: reinstate the nationally acclaimed City Streets teen programs and programs of that caliber. Budget allocation approximately $200,000. 2 recreation coordinators, full-time teen program specialists, 2 recreation part-time staff, program specialists, and supplies approximately $20,000. We also ask that the new Parks and Recreation directors, city managers, and councilmen and women conduct a minimum of 10 teen focus groups involving a maximum of 15 teens ages 13 to 17 and youth focus groups ages 18 to 24, both groups who are out of school and out of work.
Ms. Salinas, if you could wrap it up, please.
Okay, my option is 2. I like 1, but I don't own property, so I wouldn't be contributing. Or also a hybrid of 1 and 2. Let us all put our money where we want it. Thank you.
I think it's Hazel Green. Okay. And then Katie Pace.
Hi, my name is Hazel Green. Today I come as a human being in support of the younger human beings. But first I'd like to ask you guys a question. How stressed sometimes do you become from your job? Very stressed, you don't have to tell me, I already know. And I'm for certain that you have a technique, I hope, to relieve that stress. I don't don't need to know what it is, but I'm for certain we all have something. Well, in my opinion, I think that's the role of a park for young kids. It's a place where they can go and relieve their stress. It's a place where they can go and be themselves. They don't have to be afraid of their environment. And it's just a beautiful environment to make sure that we maintain that for our kids. I'm standing for every child in my neighborhood. I live in South Phoenix. My child goes to Hermosa Park. I have another son that goes to Hermosa Park, and for the last 15 years, it's become their second family. And I'm so appreciative for everything that that park has done and all the employees to instill a part of their spirit into my child or my children. My oldest son, he's actually my nephew, but I raised him, he has been going there forever. Rob Sells, who recently passed away, was a big mentor in his life. And he was very sad when Rob passed away, but he has decided that part of his success from this day forward, he will always give thanks to Rob and to the City of Phoenix Parks, because now he is graduating from South High as a private pilot. He's going on to flight school. And I really have to say that that has a lot to do with the contributions that the employees from the City of Phoenix have made to their lives and even to my son's life. And not only their lives, I speak for every child who can't be here today to say thank you, to say how much they appreciate having a refuge, having a place to go where they can be safe, they can be nurtured, and they can be appreciated as human beings. And our society proves that stress contributes to the violence, to the suicide, to the drug use, all of those things. They're very beautiful children, they're just stressed out. And clearly it's more complicated than Parks and Recreations, but I ask that you please always consider the human being before you make any cuts, please. There's no price on the value of saving a child's life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Pakes, and I spoke at a budget hearing meeting last week sharing some personal stories about the PAC program. I'm an Osborne Governing School Board member as well, and I'm here to talk about the need to expand PAC programs and funding and to make that the highest priority. And the reason why is that PAC is high quality, it's in high demand, and it's also a valuable partnership between the city and the schools. First, it's high quality. It's not only childcare, and it's not childcare, and it's not solely recreational. What it is it brings experiential learning opportunities in the arts, in physical education, in science, in math, in nutrition, and in peer-to-peer mentorship. This is one of the only places in our schools where our kids interact with each other across grade level, across curriculum, 5 days a week. It's incredibly important. It's also in high demand. Our wait lists range from 20 to 60 kids for any semester of PAC that we have. It's a valuable partnership. And according to the Mayor's Roundtable report, reducing the number of disconnected youth would generate more than $63 billion in social benefits and more than $21 billion in fiscal benefits. And for this, the work needs to start early in elementary and in middle school. PAC programs connect our youth early and they keep them actively engaged in school. This sets our children up for success into high school and beyond. And furthermore, PAC provides high school students and graduates important job opportunities. And finally, this program, we understand, especially in Osborne, where we've had cuts from the state year after year after year. This is the first year where we actually have an increase in funds. And so when we have that decision to make what we are going to invest in, we make the decision not to just invest in things just to reinstate them. We examine what the need is in our district or the need in our area is, and then reinstate based on that need. So expanding PAC program actually makes fiscal sense and it's common sense. And lastly, these opinions, they're not just my own. I'm here to present a petition that has 300 Phoenix signatures, 1,100 signatures from Arizona, and over 9,000 signatures worldwide. So thank you, Councilman Nowakowski, Councilman Valenzuela, and Councilwoman Pastor for giving us the opportunity to provide our voice and to explain our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you see me Laura Stone, and then Jose Sanchez.
Hi, I'm Laura Stone. I live in District 4, just right down here off of Thomas. I'm here as a private citizen, and I am currently on the Arts and Culture Commission. I want to thank you for your support for arts and culture grants programs and other initiatives of the Arts and Culture Commission. One of the things that I most value about living in Phoenix is what a vibrant cultural community we have, and the city plays a really important role in all of that. My colleague Jenny Strickland spoke eloquently earlier, so I'm not going to cover all of the ground that she did, but I do want to say that I support the city manager's trial budget recommendation option 1, which includes an increase in revenue and partially restores previously made cuts to the Arts and Culture Grants Program. If options 1 and 2 are not approved by council, I do not support cuts to cultural facilities management and property management services. I urge the City Council to support the City Manager's proposed 2016-17 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose Sanchez, and then Yaritza Loya.
Hello, my name is Jose Sanchez. I'm a student at North High. I'm a junior. And today I'm here because, well, firstly I'd like to, as I already told Congresswoman Laura Pastor, thank her and the City Council for having this meeting and for engaging you. And we've seen them do this through events like that of the Youth Engagement Summit, which unfortunately I couldn't attend. But again, I'd like to thank you all. And so I'd like to see, what it is I'd like to see, this is a youth engagement budget meeting. This is a youth budget meeting. I'd like to see more youth. You know, we have 2 tables here of youth students who look to get engaged. But I'd like to see that we play a more active role in coming up with the agenda for not only what it is, issues that are close to, that are in line with issues that we face in our everyday lives as students. And so I'd like to see that. I'd also like to see that PACs, which are the Phoenix After School Centers, aren't cut. I understand the importance of youth centers for teens who have dropped out. And I believe that we shouldn't have to choose one over the other, that maybe we should fund both, because it's not a matter of which is more important. They are both incredibly important. We understand the need to support young people who have dropped out of school, but we also understand the need of keeping young people in school and engaged. So, thank you.
Yaritza, and then Stephanie Maldonado.
Good afternoon. My name is Yaritza, and I actually attend Cesar Chavez, and I'm a junior there. And same as Jose, I really hope that in the future, hopefully really soon, we have more youth participation. I believe that, I understand that adults might know what is possibly going on, but I feel like the people that actually know what is going, or what is affecting their school life are students, are youths. And this is a youth meeting, and I would appreciate, or I would really hope that we could actually have youth participate in the organization of these meetings. It would be a really great opportunity not only to help them get better jobs or get somewhere in their life. And I really think that is a really important thing to focus on. Not just deciding on what is possibly going to help them, but having them participate in those choices. Thank you.
And then Rafael.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Maldonado, and I'm here on behalf of Arizona Center for Empowerment and some of our student volunteers. As a community organizer, I believe that budget cuts on education and voter suppression makes creating a more inclusive community harder. In this past election, a story that really resonated with me was that one of our student volunteers' party was changed at the time that she was going to vote. So when she went to vote, after waiting in line for 3 hours, she was told she was registered independent. However, she had been registered Democratic since she registered to vote. After having a hard time, she was finally given her ballot. She missed class, and she also missed a test that day. This is very concerning to me because the work that we do at ACE is surrounded on civic engagement and getting voter engagement. So when things like this happen, it makes our community lose trust in organizations that job is to register them to vote. So today I ask for the leadership in the City Council to help avoid these things in the future, since the state and county have failed to do so. Thank you.
Rafael, and then Yenny Sanchez Perez.
Hello, my name is Rafael Moreno, and I go to Camelback High School. I am very excited to be casting my first ballot this in upcoming November. However, it concerns me and even discourages me to know that my vote might not be accounted for in future elections. My vote is a reflection of how my community feels about issues that are persistent in my everyday life. I trust and I rely on people in charge to help my community thrive, but by suppressing my votes and the votes of the people in my community, you are not helping us thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. And after Yenny Sanchez Perez, Jasmine Velasquez.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Yenny Sanchez, and I'm here representing myself as a student, and I'm also here representing ACE, Arizona Center for Empowerment, and registering people to vote as a volunteer. I think it should be a priority to keep our students engaged in programs after school, not just for fun, but also for their safety. And also to keep our children, well, I don't have a kid, but I mean myself. But to keep them safe and have better knowledge in our community. Cutting recreation does not benefit our city and our community, but it diminishes the health of our fellow youth and their engagement in the city. As a volunteer to register people to vote, I was very sad to see how big the lines were. There is also a lack of information going towards our Hispanic community, which I noticed when I was going around register to vote, that they were like, what are the presidential preference elections? And I was like, you don't know what they are, and so I had to tell them. And it was also a wreck hearing that my teacher said she had to wait 6 hours in line to have her voice be heard, and she ordered pizza twice because she got hungry. So that is all. Thank you.
Jasmine and Miriam Mendez.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Velasquez. I am from Camelback High School, and I am a future first-time voter. Ever since the last primary took place in Arizona, I've been paranoid that I will be in the same position as the voters the voters were suppressed from voting on that day. As a future first-time voter, I fear I won't have access to something I should have access to. My right to vote should be the last thing I should be worried about. This is important to me, so I can act for those in my community who are unable to. Thank you.
Thank you. So Miriam, and then Nicole Hale.
Hi, my name is Miriam Mendez, and I'm representing myself as well as the Arizona Center for Empowerment. And so I'm here to talk about the voter suppression and how it's affecting my community. And, you know, my mom, she works 2 jobs. She actually works at Cesar Chavez High School, and she didn't have time to vote. Why? Because of the long lines. And so what we're seeing is that this is common. So you guys aren't only suppressing our voice, but you guys are also suppressing us as a people. And so it disengages us and disencourages us from voicing our thoughts and our opinions on who to vote for or just to vote in general. And that's an issue. So besides that, like, I hate that you guys are also even thinking about cutting budgets and programs, because I went to Cesar Chavez High School. I'm a psych major and I'm studying sociology now. Like, you guys don't realize how it's gonna affect people in the long run. So like, I really encourage you guys not to do that. So that's all I gotta say. Think about it. Thank you.
Nicole, and then Samantha Hill.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Hale, and I am also here on behalf of Arizona Center for Empowerment. And I'm also here on behalf of the students that I work and organize with every single day to make Phoenix a healthier, more vibrant, and inclusive city. And I'm here to let you know that the recent voter suppression and continued cuts to the budget and to funding our students' education makes our work much harder. And that's something that we here in Phoenix can't afford. So on the day of the Arizona primary, I saw a very active and engaged student be denied her opportunity and her power to vote. I struggled to take her from class to the polls, where she waited for 3 hours and still was unable to place her vote because she had to go back to class. We shouldn't put our students in these positions between deciding to vote and their education. That's just not okay. It's not acceptable, because our students really, they're our future, right? They're our future leaders. They're the people that are going to make our communities better. So we can't continue to suppress their vote, not protect their voting rights, and to cut their education funding. And so, yeah, that's what I was really here to tell you today. And that's about it. Thank you.
So here comes Samantha, and then Gilbert Romero.
Hello, my name is Samantha Hill, and I am a freshman at ASU. I am also a Phoenix resident and a first-time voter. I am representing both myself and the Arizona Center for Empowerment today. So on the past election day, my voting center was at 7th Street in Glendale, and I waited in line for 5.5 hours to cast my vote. I was standing in line alongside working mothers with infants and young children, elderly people and disabled people who were all standing there for hours. As it transitioned into the nighttime, it was cold, we didn't have food or water, and those 5.5 hours were taken away from my time that I should have been spending on homework. This is my first election, and so I'm really disappointed in the widespread disenfranchisement that occurred in this past election as a result of the state and county's failure. We need to make voting easier, not harder. It's one of our most basic rights. So today we are asking for our city to step up and take a position of leadership. We're asking for a healthy community and for increased voter protection. Thank you.
Gilbert, who lost his phone. And then Debbie Cross.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gilbert Romero. I'm a community organizer with the Arizona Center for Empowerment. I want to thank the City Council and the City Council members and the staff for the continued support to make voting as accessible as possible, as easy as possible. It's really refreshing to know that we have advocates at the city. what we saw on March 22nd, I believe, was our primary, was blatant voter suppression. The state and county unfortunately failed us. So we're here today, all of our volunteers are here today, is to ask the city to continue the work they've been doing to ensure that voting is easier, not harder. A lot of the things, unfortunately, that are happening at the state level and at the county level is making it harder for our community to vote. The folks who couldn't afford to wait hours and hours in line were folks with disabilities, or single mothers who had multiple jobs, and it's in the elderly community. And so we really need the city council and folks in city leadership to understand the importance of voting and really to continue the work that they're already doing in the city to make sure that it's easier, not harder to vote. So we can do all the civic engagements possible. We can have all the amazing volunteers, but none of it really matters until we have the continued city leadership to ensure that our right to vote isn't infringed. So I want to thank you all for taking leadership. I want to thank you all for being amazing advocates at the city, and hope that we can work together to ensure that this election, this primary in August and our general in November is as smooth and as democratic as possible. So thank you.
Debbie, and then Dorena Bustamante.
I come here as a concerned citizen, and I teach here at Metro Tech. I teach banking and finance, and I have a few of my students with me. I'd like to see the combination, or both, option 1 and 2 put into effect, especially as someone had mentioned earlier, is that 1 takes care of those people who contribute would be homeowners. Those who are renters would not be contributing, and that option 2 would help them to contribute to the betterment of the city. I'd like to see that because we are a growing city. We continue to need more services, more policemen, more firemen, more finances going into education. In order to have those good things about us, we also then attract businesses to the city, which create more jobs, which also bring in more taxes to the city. So I'd like to see that happen. So definitely the opportunity of having both 1 and 2 go into effect. I'd also like to see an internship or summer programs for students. I'd like to see an internship on the council. Have a few students serve on the council with you from some of the Phoenix Union High School District schools within the area. I think that would be very helpful for the students, and it empowers them as well. And last but not least, I would say the last 3 options are just Band-Aids. So, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, City of Phoenix. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, City Manager's Office.
Thank you, City Council. Thank you, City Manager's Office, for providing this wonderful series of opportunities for the community to speak out in for or favor of this budgetary process. So I'm a 5th generation Arizonan. My name is Dorena Bustamante. I'm a small business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm also the Director of Community Engagement for Downtown Phoenix, although I do not live in Downtown Phoenix, but I'm a Phoenix resident. Everyone's downtown. But I'm also on the City of Phoenix Parks and Recreation Board of Directors, so that's why I'm here tonight. But before I get into what I'm in favor of, I just want to give a shout out to the Tree and Shade Program and the Bicycle Master Plan. Thank you, Tim Igo, who is here with Downtown Phoenix Voices. Also appreciate the shout outs for the city, for the council, and for staff. You guys go above and beyond. You're unsung heroes, and you deserve mad respect all day long. So thank you. Yes. Thank you. I'm in support of the option 1, preserving services and employee restoration, for sure. I'm also in support of whatever it will take to continue the services and programs at our parks and preserves. Obviously, we've heard from a lot of youngsters here today. We know the importance, it's a no-brainer. Let's just get on the stick and not turn back. It would be silly to not serve our youth and empower them for the future. These are our leaders right here in this room. I mean, the demonstration is enough. So the third thing that I would love to propose, which I understand was in existence for Parks Board in past,
15 years ago, we had youth board members for the City of Phoenix Parks and Recreation. How many of you have ever been on a board who's under 18 years old? You in the back, okay. How many of you would like to be on the City of Phoenix Parks and Recreation Board of Directors and help to regulate parks, programs, and preserves? Okay, a few. So maybe that would be another thing that could be considered for the City of Phoenix, because this is your town just as much as it is at your age for any age. So those are the items that I just wanted to suggest. I might be over 2 minutes, but thank you, City of Phoenix. Parks, rah, rah, rah.
Thank you. Councilman Nowakowski, would you like to say a few words?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for participating. It's so important that we hear from the whole community and especially from the young people. People always say that the young people are the future leaders, but today that what we see tonight was that you're the leaders of today. And you're acting like the leaders of today, talking about voting, talking about how important it is to pick the right leaders to represent us, not only at the city, but at the state and at the county, and even all the way to the President of the United States. So, thank you for caring. Thank you for coming out here and telling us that we need to do a better job when it comes to voting and making sure that there's no obstacles, that every single vote is counted for. The other thing is all the different programs that we have in the city of Phoenix, and especially the workforce programs, the camp colleagues of the world, the library programs that we have, the after-school programs, that PAC program, that it's not just an after-school program, but it's a program that helps individuals with their homework, helps individuals that have no parents that they could go home to because they're working. They're working late at night, somebody to help them with their homework. Because I really believe it's through education. Once you get this high school degree, and then you go diploma, and then you go to college, that's the way we're gonna end domestic violence. That's the way we're gonna end gang violence, and that's the way we're gonna end poverty. It's because of that education that you all get, you're gonna break that cycle. And I just really wanna thank you all for working hard, and especially here at the high school level, and getting that diploma. Don't stop there. It's so important to go on to the next level and become those lawyers, doctors, engineers, and politicians that make a difference in our world, right? So thank you, thank you, thank you. The other thing is about 5 years ago, we used to have a youth council. All right, I used to have it in District 7, and we kind of dropped that because of all the budget cuts and stuff. And we used to have a representative that sat on different boards and commissions, like Dorena used to say. We used to pick one from District 7 to actually sit on the Parks Board. And I think we need to bring that back. Even though we have these budget cuts, there's no reason for us not to have youth councils. So I will try to bring back that youth council for the individuals in District 7. And let me tell you, I learned so much from our youth council. That's how we got the movies in the park. That in the summer times, we have movies in the park every weekend in District 7. The other thing that we brought back was that we need to do things in the parks. When I was growing up, we had record hops at our rec centers, at our churches, and we really don't have that anymore. The young people were always saying, where do we go hang out? There's nowhere for us no teen bars in the city of Phoenix. There's nowhere for us just to hang out and have a good time after hours. So we need to create that environment where you can go somewhere and feel safe. If it's just hanging out at one of our rec centers, if it's hanging out at one of the halls, or partnering up with the churches. Back in the days, I guess Laura too, it's the record hops, right? We used to have record hops, but now I think that's outdating ourselves. But you need somewhere for young people to get together and have fun. So once again, thank you for all these suggestions. I wrote them down, and we'll take them into consideration when we get to the council. The other thing is that we need to save all of our programs, and at the same time, we got to keep our word to all of our employees. 6 years ago, they took a 6% cut. And we need to make sure that we give that money back to all of our employees, and we need to make sure we have enough police officers and firefighters out there to protect us. So God bless you all, and thank you once again for being leaders of today.
Thank you.
I also want to thank all of you for coming out. It's incredible. I appreciate during this message at the end is as much, or these parks, but this city is as much yours as it is anyone else's. And as I mentioned before, our goal is to attract, retain, and of course, develop talent. And the people in this room, those three goals touch everyone in this room. Attract, retain, and especially develop talent. We want this city to be reflective of your needs and your wants, and this is what it comes down to. This isn't the federal government. You know, it's not Congress where continue to kick the can down the road on these budget hearings and continue to watch the deficit grow. Here at the local level, by law, we have to adopt this budget. So as I mentioned before, with or without your input, we have to adopt the budget. And we want this budget to be something that has your fingerprints on it, and something that you're proud of. So this is being recorded, as I mentioned. You can access the link on YouTube. Go to phoenix.gov. It'll be there. Send it to your friends, your family. Encourage them to send an email to their respective council member or all of the council members and the mayor. It's not too late to be heard. It's not too late to weigh in. And when we adopt that budget, we want it to be something that's reflective of what you want. So thank you so much for coming out. I especially want to thank Councilwoman Pastor for holding this in District 4. Without further ado, Councilwoman Laura Pastor.
Everybody wants to thank you. What I would like to encourage you to do as to be engaged is to send emails to each one of our district offices or to the city manager. I read every one of my emails. It may take me a little while, but I will read it and I will get it, and then I'll remember. Someone randomly will bump into each other and say, got your email, I remember. So thank you for being here. I enjoy the fact that the youth are here and engaged. We will have more and more of these as we move forward, because I want to be connected to you. One of the things that happened at the Youth Summit was the fact that I said, I'm coming to you because I want to hear from you. Because I can make decisions for you, and I may be making a decision that doesn't impact you the way you want it to impact you. So that's why I felt it was very important to have a youth budget hearing so that you guys can get involved and engage and understand at this age. If it wasn't for the City of Phoenix and their youth programs, I wouldn't know. I was part of the Youth Commission. I started at 15, and that's really where I learned a lot about budgets and learned about the city and programming and the effects that it has in our community. In addition to that, I also met, they're now known as ACYR. At that time, it was Collatine. At that time, I started working. I met a woman named Bernice. As I sat on the Youth Commission, I said, hey, I needed a job. I actually was 14 when I sat on the Youth Commission. And that was my first job. So I started working at 14. And so these are some of the things that impacted my life, that with the connectivity that happened with these programs, I probably wouldn't be standing here today, and the mentorship. So that's why I find this very important. So thank you for the youth. Youth, can you stand up so we can acknowledge you? Ladies in the back, thank you. Thank you for being here. So, appreciate all your work and appreciate your activity in the community, because it's your future. I'm getting ready, I have several more years, but it's your future. I'm trying to make sure it's there for you. So thank you once again for participating.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.